Okay, I know this was quite challenging to pick 10 or more of your most influential bands, bands that have affected you in your life, one way or another. I attempted to do the same thing, and after reading all the bands that you guys listed, of course, there's some like Aerosmith. I mean, Aerosmith was one of those bands that in the 70s, that I bought probably every one of their records up until when Joe Perry left the band. And when Joe Perry left and he did his own solo record, and let the music do the talking. I think that was the name of the record, or that was a hit off the record. I don't remember exactly. Anyway, that's when I kind of threw in the towel on Aerosmith. But albums like Get Your Wings and Rocks, to this day, I love Aerosmith. So that is a time in my life where I first started getting into, heavy rock music. And a couple of the first groups that came to mind were Kiss and Alice Cooper. And when I think about it, I was really into the theatrical aspects of rock and roll, and there wasn't a whole lot back then besides like jumping on stage, or really theatrical would have. I wasn't really familiar with the other glitter rock bands at that time yet. But Kiss and Alice Cooper inspired me hugely. I was still like semi picky with what I liked, though. I mean, I started listening to Kiss and Alice Cooper probably when I was about, I'm just gonna throw it out there, about 9 years old, something like that, I'd say. And I definitely had a lot of favorite songs, but as I got a little bit older, it was definitely certain things stuck out. I mean, with Kiss, once the albums got to, I felt like Love Gun was kind of, I didn't quite like Love Gun and Beyond as much. Though now, I mean, I listen to Dynasty and I'm blown away by how great a few of the songs are on there. It's not a disco album, or anybody that hasn't put on Dynasty, Kiss Dynasty, in a while, listen to it. Listen to it. There's actually a Ace Frehley song on there, but it's a Rolling Stones cover, and that's like such a great song. And there's a couple other Ace Frehley songs that are great rock songs on there. Anyway, but though as you guys listed bands, I definitely found more bands that have affected me one way or another in my life. I mean, it's but we'll just do this. We'll go, okay. So my list goes Kiss, Alice Cooper, Nirvana and the Melvins, Motorhead, Elliott Smith, Bad Brains, Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, Minor Threat, Pink Floyd. At one point, I think Pink Floyd and Nirvana were, I listened to all kinds of stuff, but they were two of my favorite bands in like 1988. And bands like Pink Floyd and Zeppelin, and actually the Beatles late, probably about 1990, when I first really got into the Beatles. But there was some hard rock stuff I didn't listen to until the 80s, really. But bands like Black Sabbath I listened to in the 70s. Kiss, Alice Cooper, Deep Purple, Aerosmith, just to name a few. Ted Nugent. I could actually put Ted Nugent on the list. Though, yeah, I mean, really, I would have to say, Ted Nugent, as much as I'm not, I don't listen to Ted Nugent anymore, honestly, but Ted Nugent influenced me dramatically, hugely in the 70s. And I think there was a certain intensity to Ted Nugent, and he was kind of like that kick your ass rock and roll, um, off the rails, almost like he came across a little bit punk rock, you know. Now you wouldn't even know it, but back then it was like, there wasn't much that came across like Ted Nugent back then. Anyway, yeah, so Ted Nugent for sure, but Ted Nugent failed to remain original. And the Amboy Dukes, when there's amazing songs like Great White Buffalo and Hibernation and Journey to the Center of the Mind, and like some of that early stuff, and then early Nugent stuff is pretty fucking good actually. And then he latched on to the glam rock thing, and then all of a sudden he's in Damn Yankees, and I mean, it's all over. Anyway, so regarding a lot of the votes here, I kept track as much as I could, and yeah, so what we have Nirvana obviously getting the most votes, and that's not a big surprise. The Beatles second. Runners up would be Zeppelin, Sabbath, The Doors, Alice in Chains, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Soundgarden. So these are all that got like 4-5 votes. But yeah, I mean, there were a lot that only got 1 vote. I was kind of surprised. Besides myself, only one other person mentioned the Melvins. And I got to look at that. I mean, for myself, my history with the Melvins definitely was part of it for me. And what's interesting is I look back, and even when they were pretty much just a punk rock band, it had slow songs. It was the slow songs that I loved, and I'd always tell those guys, I'd request, Set Me Straight, and then they had Grinding Process and the other slow songs, and it was like, oh my god, perfect, the Melvins are a slow band, so, but, I find out that, a lot of the heavy stuff like Sabbath that I loved, and Kiss, the same type of groups that influenced, really, that Buzz was really, really into. I mean, we grew up in the same area with the same music around, in a sense. So that's interesting, The Melvins are one of those bands. It's just like, to me, extremely influential in so many ways. Anyway, but I was interested. There was only one other person that mentioned the Melvins, and I could let this go on and on, but as you can see, I mean, I have a page filled up, and it can become pretty tedious to mark down everyone. I'm complaining. So anyway, this was fun, and it was interesting to see what happened here. And actually, the Pixies only got one vote. You know, there were some groups like, let's see, Metallica. Metallica, only one vote. I thought that was interesting. Actually, Megadeth got 2 votes, and I'm close on Megadeth. I would say Megadeth and Metallica for me, both kind of hand in hand. See, again, it's like they're influential, but yet there's a certain thing with like where something influential and how something really hits you as being original, you know, maybe, right? Yeah, so very interesting. I was kind of surprised. Like Soundgarden, I would have thought would have got a few more votes through my YouTube channel, because I felt like based on the YouTube channel there would be a lot of Nirvana votes, but I also felt like, you know, Soundgarden and Alice in Chains, you know, Pearl Jam got 3 votes. Foo Fighters got 1. So I'm just kind of saying, like, related to the big, you know, the big Northwest bands. But, you know, I mean, again, it's there's so many different bands that could inspire and influence you. Yeah, so there was only one other vote for Motorhead besides myself. And again, it's like, you know, without Motorhead, you know, you know, the history of punk rock and metal, I don't even know what it would look like, you know. So in one sense, it's like, yeah, I mean, for me, Motorhead impacted me hugely, you know. I mean, there was a few metal bands at that time that, but I would say, like, you know, Iron Maiden and Motorhead were the 2 that I think impacted me the most, you know. But yeah, so let's see. Zeppelin, Korn, The Doors, Pantera, Sabbath, Rage Against the Machine. You know, I mean, a band like Rage Against the Machine was incredibly original for when they came out. I mean, there was nothing until really, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the time that they came out, you know, and then Sublime, but there was like mixtures of musical styles that hadn't really been heard combined quite like that, you know. And Rage Against the Machine, I would say, besides the Red Hot Chili Peppers, you know, combining almost the, I don't want to say rapping, but it's almost like that, you know, combining musical styles. So you're combining funk or rap with rock, you know, like there wasn't many bands doing that, you know. Of course, Sublime, you know, got like 1 vote, but Sublime has become, I mean, you know, when you look at what they've done, they are hugely original and influential, you know, for what they did in a short period of time. I mean, there's no doubt about it. All right, so I'm going to stop rambling, and thanks again for your participation. I'll think of something else interesting coming up. You know, another band like the Velvet Underground and the Stooges. I don't think there was 1 vote for the Stooges. There may have been one. I don't think so. I think I would have written it down. So if you said the Stooges, if you wrote the Stooges down, then the Stooges are incredibly important. Stooges and Velvet Underground, you know, incredibly important for being influential in the history of punk rock and rock and roll, you know, really. In so many ways. The Sweet, for sure. You know, another band I don't think I saw mentioned. I tried to write down every band. So most every band. A few I didn't write down. Anyway, okay, well, thanks much.